Well, my name is Stephen Rapp. I'm the U.S. Ambassador at Large for War Crimes Issues. Before taking up this post in the Obama administration about a year and a half ago, I'd spent 9 years prosecuting people for crimes like genocide and war crimes and crimes against humanity, and for international tribunals in Rwanda and in Sierra Leone. In the course of that, worked with a lot of people from New Zealand who were involved in investigation and prosecution with me. Now in this new role, I'm essentially in charge of working with Secretary Clinton in developing our approach to justice around the world, our engagement with the tribunals like the ones that I used to work in for Rwanda or Yugoslavia, newer courts that have been established to deal with atrocities past and present, like those for the Cambodia court dealing with the horrible atrocities that happened there in the 70s, the Lebanon Tribunal dealing with the assassination of former Prime Minister Hariri, and courts that are being developed to deal with crimes in other conflict zones in the world. New Zealand and the United States have a real common interest in justice and achieving accountability and in preventing genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. I'm here today. In fact, people probably see this later, but today's the 27th of January, which is the day where we commemorate the Holocaust, the day that 66 years ago the death camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau was freed. And that's the kind of crime that we said then at Nuremberg and in the years thereafter would never happen again. Sadly, in places like Cambodia and Rwanda, Yugoslavia, and on an ongoing basis in places like the Democratic Republic of Congo, we see innocent civilians targeted for murder, for rape, for other atrocities based upon their religion, based upon their ethnicity, usually for the benefit of the political power of some group that's then in power or some group that's seeking power. And if we're going to prevent that, in my view, as someone that was involved before all of this in a law enforcement and justice system in my own country, a key part of that is sending the message that there will be consequences to these crimes, that if you do the crime, you'll do the time. Sadly, historically, when leaders of countries or leaders of militias or powerful groups committed mass atrocity, there was no consequence. You could kill hundreds of thousands and get away with it. You'd kill one person and maybe face consequences in an individual country. People were allowed to go into a safe and comfortable exile at worst. At best, they died in their beds in control of a particular political part of the world. Now, with what's happened originally in the period just after World War II, but most specifically since the end of the Cold War, with the development of international justice, the Yugoslavia Tribunal that brought President Slobodan Milosevic and other people like Radovan Karadzic to justice, with the Rwanda Tribunal, with these other institutions, we've now set really the standard and adult messages being delivered to the people around the world and to people that might commit these crimes, that there are consequences. That system is imperfect. There are courts in some places, not in others. It's always difficult to bring people like this to justice, and it requires diplomatic engagement. It requires countries to cooperate together if it's going to happen. No one country can make it happen, and that's why I'm here in New Zealand and on part of a 7-nation trip, which included 6 other countries in the general region. Well, I mean, there are 2 things. One, of course, dealt specifically with some regional issues like the Cambodia Tribunal. The former Governor General of New Zealand, Dame Sylvia Cartwright, is one of the judges of the trial chamber that will, in June, begin what will probably be the most important trial in the world in Phnom Penh, the trial of the 4 surviving leaders of the Pol Pot government that killed 2 million people in the late 70s. I saw her in Phnom Penh 10 days ago with her colleagues. That court needs financial support, it needs political support to be able to do the job. And I'm engaging with other countries to develop the strategy to assure that happens, and New Zealand is a large partner in that. I was dealing also with the situation in Burma, where there's no court to hold people responsible for these kinds of crimes, but where there's international pressure for a commission of inquiry to at least find the facts, to record what's happened. People allege that thousands of villages have been destroyed, tens of thousands of people killed and raped, and of course we see 2 or 3 million people fleeing Burma. A commission of inquiry is something both the United States and Burma are supporting. It's something we can work together on. Additionally, there's the issue of the International Criminal Court. New Zealand's a leader in the International Criminal Court, a ratified state. There are 113 countries in it now. The United States is not. We're very slow to go into international treaties and conventions. Requires 2/3 of the Senate. We have a tradition growing up not being, sort of cut our ties with mother country 230 years ago. And for a long period of the time, the United States developed its own institutions and is very proud of those institutions. Of getting Americans and the members of the Senate and 2/3 of them to think about going into international conventions is never easy. On the other hand, we believe very much in international justice. And even though we had concerns when the treaty was written, as it's developed, the cases that the ICC prosecutor is pursuing in the Democratic Republic of Congo or in Uganda or now in Kenya are cases that are important for international justice. Victims, tens of thousands of them, are crying out for justice, and without this court, there wouldn't be any. So we're now engaging with that court, finding ways, even without being a member, that we can help assist that court in protecting witnesses and helping effect arrests, and in order to ensure that the prosecutor has the information about who is responsible. So we're working with countries like New Zealand in this process. We're now an observer within the ICC. And it's important, I think, to deliver the message that even while the United States isn't a member, we want to work with New Zealand and other countries to ensure that those that are responsible for the targeting of the innocent, for the killing of tens of thousands as genocide, war crimes, or crimes against humanity, need to face justice, and that we have to work together to make that happen. First of all, we do have a very strong system of holding people to account without fear or favor. We've had cases where presidents of the United States have been taken to the Supreme Court and lost 9-0 and been forced out of office. We've had other cases of leading members of our Senate or Congress who are committee chairs who are being prosecuted and held to account. We have a system of military justice that's a real model. Speaking here with one of the leaders in military justice in the New Zealand system, he mentioned an American who is a good friend of both of ours that was a key figure in the ICC negotiation in actually laying out the actual crimes, defining war crimes, and then defining the elements of war crimes. That was actually an American project because we have such experience in holding people to account. Our principle, as far as these crimes are concerned, is that if Americans commit these crimes, we'll prosecute them ourselves, just as countries that within the ICC have the same principle. It's only when there's a complete failure, an incapacity, or a lack of will that it goes to the international level. Additionally, we recognize that our record in human rights isn't perfect. We certainly have a record of a long period of our history when a large part of our population was enslaved, a long period of time when even freed rights were denied. We recognize that we have ways to go. We recently joined the Human Rights Council in Geneva. Actually, I think New Zealand helped us get our position on the Human Rights Council, and we appreciate that because we wanted to send the signal that we're committed to human rights. And then we participated in the Universal Periodic Review, in which we put our own record on human rights to the test. I recall a conversation I had with a good friend of mine, the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva, Judge Pillay, Navi Pillay of South Africa, who was the presiding judge in the case that I prosecuted at the Rwanda Tribunal, the media trial. And we were discussing how there were some conventions that the United States had not ratified yet, and I was frankly wishing we would go ahead and ratify them. And her comment was, well, you protect the rights of the child, you do these things, etc., far more effectively than some countries that do ratify. And so that's very much the American attitude, that we will step up into our own system and enforce these rights. But I think a lot of us also recognize that it's important to participate in multilateral institutions and find ways that we can ratify them if possible, and if not, join in a partnership with those countries that are in them to make sure that they are effective in the interests of all the people of the world.